Do not let yourself be fooled by Lyney and Lynette's puppy dog eyes or by the verdict issued by the Oratress, because the twins are, in fact, guilty. Not of the serial disappearances case, mind you, but of staging the entire murder and trial and possibly getting Childe arrested. They are good magicians, so they know how to divert the attention of their audience, us players included. And yet there are two inconsistencies about their story that paint a completely different picture of what really happened. The first one is the current location of the real Halsey. Side note, while I was still rotating all of this info in my head, Cat with blue hat made a video about Halsey, which is really complete and really good, so definitely check it out if you haven't, because I'm not the first person to point this out. That said, I'll still give you my 2 cents about Halsey in a second, because first I want to talk about the other inconsistency, Lyney's alibi. The traveler used the fact that Lyney did not hear the loud noise coming from the struggle between Cowell and Lillian as proof that he was not in the tunnel during the crime and thus could not have committed it. Instead, he had been in the basement, which contains the Oratress's core, having accessed it via a vent located in the tunnel. Lyney claims that this was because he wanted to study the Oratress and learn its secrets, so he used the roughly 1 minute afforded to him by having the crowd count down in preparation for the box swap trick to get close to this machine. The problem? That's a lie. There is absolutely no reason for Lyney to check out the Oratress in that precise moment, especially given how little time he had. The tunnel that connected the 2 boxes had likely been there for a long time. It's a trap room. It allows actors to enter and exit the stage without being seen when the play calls for it, but it's mostly used as a storage room. Hence why we found a ton of props and costumes down there. The Opera Epiclese isn't just a courtroom, so it makes perfect sense for the tunnel to have been built alongside the stage. However, there was something in that trap room that was probably brand new: the trolley. No one knew how the trick worked, meaning it was a never-before-seen performance. That said, if one were to see the trolley, it wouldn't be hard to put 2 and 2 together. Meaning Lyney, Lynette, and the rest of the assistants probably assembled it themselves. That would explain why the twins were so well acquainted with how the mechanisms worked, but it also implies that they were quite familiar with the tunnel itself, familiar enough to have noticed the vent and discovered where it led. Let's be real, Lyney knew where it led during the play. He didn't decide to check it out in the spur of the moment. He openly admits to knowing. But if they had been in the trap room prior, either when building the trolley or even during rehearsals and prop checks, why not check out the basement then? It's not like they were under surveillance back then. No one would have been keeping an eye on them. I'll play devil's advocate against myself, though, and give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say the twins couldn't find an opportunity to check out the Oratress without the other assistants being present, which seems highly unlikely, but anyway. Let's say they needed to pull it off during the show to ensure they were away from prying eyes. Why Lyney? Both him and Lynette are part of the House of the Hearth. They are Fatui. They were trained as such. They are both competent. Does it really matter who goes into the basement? They can just relay their findings to the other. So why Lyney? Lynette is just an assistant. She isn't expected to be on stage at all times. In fact, there were multiple occasions prior to the water tank crashing down where she was nowhere to be seen. But most importantly, she was in a box. She claims that she was the one that stepped out towards the end of the countdown and that Lyney was already in the box in the middle of the audience back then. Lynette has to have left the box immediately after peeking out, or she would have been crushed alongside Cowell. If the twins really had no idea that the murder would take place, they could simply have planned to have Lynette go into the tunnel afterward and examine the Oratress core. She had to exit stage to change back into her clothes anyway, and the audience would be too amazed by Lyney. No one would have noticed her absence. Heck, if they really needed to, one of them could have stayed hidden in the trap room and waited until the Opera Epiclese had closed down to investigate. Lillian did it, and no one found her even though the tunnel was searched. Since the twins can easily pass for one another, with a change of clothes and an extra trip, they could even have made it look like they both exited the building, if they really wanted to. But instead, they had Lyney race against the clock for a quick peek. And the timing was most convenient indeed, as it granted him with a good enough alibi. Was all of this lack of foresight coming from the guy that remembered the rule against releasing flying objects during the first 3 days of each month? Or was all of this premeditated? A means to get rid of a criminal that had infiltrated their ranks, to gain the traveler's trust, and to royally mess up the Oratress, all in one fell swoop. So let's talk about Halsey, shall we? She still has not been found. The moment Lillian revealed herself, everyone forgot about Halsey, because at the end of the day, it was Lillian that had gone missing in the box. But the guards investigated Halsey. They knew that she was an up-and-coming artist. Surely they interviewed family members and friends, right? Maybe she even filed in a complaint with them about the stolen ticket. They concluded that she was indeed missing, meaning both Lillian and Halsey were nowhere to be found. So how is no one banging at their doors now demanding answers? How could everyone forget the girl that is still missing? Because she doesn't exist. Maybe. Allow me to pull a Farina and do what passes for presenting one's case in the court of Fontaine. With their training, I refuse to believe the twins didn't know what was going on with Cowell. They knew his plan. They knew he planned to make a young girl vanish. By studying the profile of the previous victims, would it really be that difficult to fabricate someone that fit the killer's preferences to a T? The seats were assigned in advance. Cowell would have had access to the list of audience members beforehand, allowing him to rig the number selector machine, ensuring it would choose his Halsey. We know it's possible to create a fake identity in the land of Hydro. Just think about Vache/Marcel. If fake files had been created for Halsey, those could be the sole lead the guards followed. There would be no family to contact, hence why no one is demanding answers at present. With this fake identity having been created, all the twins needed was someone to bring it to life. Someone who is not from Fontaine, thus being immune to the primordial water's less savory effects, but also someone who could handle themselves in a fight, because Cowell would attempt to hide the evidence of his failed crime. And in comes Lillian. I don't believe the first time we see her on screen was her first meeting with the twins. The pacing of the beginning of the quest is just so off. We meet the quiet and reserved Lynette, who doesn't usually talk to strangers, yet she spills the beans about part of her past immediately, as well as telling us about this prophecy that is casting a shadow over Fontaine. Then in comes Lyney, who saves the traveler from Freudian's dramatics and immediately asserts himself as a good guy by distributing magic pockets to the people of Fontaine. It feels rehearsed, practiced. It feels like a play. Remember what Arlecchino said? Lyney and Lynette may think of themselves as magicians, but they are first and foremost actors, and their acting is not yet up to our standards. Everything at the beginning of the quest feels like a deliberate move to gain the traveler's trust, and Lillian is no exception. By stopping a thief, the twins would prove themselves to be upstanding citizens, but the way they go about it is just bizarre. First of all, Lillian claims she steals for a living, so you would expect her to be skilled. Yet she was easily caught in broad daylight. After that, Lyney ensured the traveler was separated from them, just in case the thief escaped, he claimed. Lillian does indeed run towards the traveler, but immediately notices and turns around. It's almost like she wanted to be seen. And then, nothing. The traveler waits for an awfully long time only to regroup with the twins and learn that they had lost a thief. Because Lyney, the guy who's a master of diverting others' attention, was successfully distracted by Lillian dropping her stolen goods on the ground. But it doesn't end there, because this poor magician twisted his ankle in her pursuit. No, let me rephrase that. This trained Fatui agent twisted his ankle while running on perfectly smooth pavement. Press X stood out. Things get even weirder when we learn that Lillian decided to attend Lyney's show despite knowing that it was the one that had chased after her the other day. If you ask me, this whole thing was also part of the performance. I'm sure the twins caught Lillian stealing and threatened to hand her in to the guards, just not on that day. And whenever they did, they likely promised to let her go on the condition that she did them a favor. All she had to do was attend the magic show. When Lillian is about to enter the box, Lyney says,
"Don't come out of the box. If the magic is interrupted, who knows where you might end up? You might even find yourself in the fortress of Meripede."
Oh, okay.
This reads so much like a veiled threat. Do as you were told, or we will hand you in to the guards. This could also explain why she looks so nervous if she, in fact, was not afraid of being recognized. The question that remains is why? The Fatui have their means of making people disappear. The twins could have gotten rid of Cowell with no one being any the wiser. The whole debacle and following trial could have been avoided. But perhaps that is exactly what they didn't want. I really don't believe that Lyney only went into the basement during the trick when they had so many other opportunities. That was just his alibi. No, they probably got up close and personal with the Oratress prior to that, which would have allowed them to tinker with it. Or perhaps they did it after the trial. Lyney openly admitted to going into the basement and nobody batted an eye. The Oratress was still working correctly after that, so this could have worked to lower everyone's guard. Look, he went in and nothing happened. He clearly didn't have any ill intent. We don't have to worry. But the thing is, the Oratress did end up malfunctioning. It decided Childe was guilty, which is just nonsensical. He would have been very young when the serial disappearances case started and living in Morapesok. You could argue that the Oratress somehow found him indirectly guilty, or that it reacted to his other crimes, or even the abyssal energy within him. But that's not really what the Oratress is programmed to do. One way or another, it's still malfunctioning. And then there is the question of who pressed charges against Tartale in the first place. His interrupted trial was unlike any other. Neuvillette was going over the charges, but there was no prosecutor. Who could have implicated him to begin with? Someone who would benefit from having him removed from the stage? Someone who could use him as a pawn? Wouldn't be the first time. And from what little we have seen of Arlecchino, it would fit her MO. So why would she and the twins want Childe sent to the fortress of Meropide? This is where the real-life references get really confusing. The fortress is a direct reference to Meropis, a fictional island which is, in turn, a parody of Atlantis, which is also fictional, even though some people don't want to believe that. Atlantis used to be a powerful nation, but due to its hubris fell out of favor with the gods and was submerged as a punishment. So far the connection is really clear, because the fortress of Meropide is also underwater and it is where you get sent for your wrongdoings. Problem is, so far that is the only connection I can find, and it doesn't tell us much in regards to why Arlecchino would hypothetically want to send Childe there. However, both of these fictional islands were created by ancient Greek authors, and that is not the only Greek inspiration behind this prison. Riosli? Whatever, I'll just call him the administrator. He has a very interesting constellation named Cerberus, aka the three-headed hellhound that guarded the gates of the underworld to prevent the dead from leaving. A very apt constellation for someone who is essentially a jailer. You would expect the administrator's job to revolve around stopping the convicted from escaping, but that's not what his introduction states. It says, despite its discretion as a resting place for criminals, the fortress of Meropide harbors a network of conflicting interests that would have a corrupting influence on many. But even if someone was bent on infiltrating this place, they'd soon be swallowed up like breadcrumbs in a bowl of soup. Infiltrating, huh? Sounds like his work may also revolve around keeping people from breaking into jail, which means that the fortress of Meropide may be hiding something of value from prying eyes. Something that would need a friend on the inside to obtain. What that something is up for debate. That said, if this really is Arlecchino's master plan, she may really have Fontaine cornered. Whether the Oratress was actually damaged to get Childe convicted or not, it doesn't change the fact that it is dishing out incorrect judgments, which is sure to affect the people's belief in justice. And once that happens, the production of Indemnitium will come to a stop and the land of Hydro will be more vulnerable than ever. But what do you think? Have we been played by Lyney and Lynette all along? I quite like the twins and sympathize with them, so I find it hard to believe they are straight up evil. But there are many shades of grey in this world. Perhaps the Traveler's gut feeling was correct after all. But what's yours? Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. Anyway, my name is Blue and I'll see you again soon. Safe journey, Travelers!